Yeah. It's so I'll be discussing about the management of post-segment trauma. Why it's actually important to study ocular trauma because it's a very common occurrence. The primary responder is the one who gives the maximum output, the visual acuity. Timely intervention can drastically change the end results. Diagnosis is clinical. Therapy can be started without elaborate investigations. And we all know the medico-legal aspect of it, that a trauma, there has to be a medico-legal documentation, especially in armed forces. We have to document the injury, and later on, the person can claim the disability because if it is occurred in a field condition. Initial poor management can lead to a downward spiral trend. So we all know that saving life before limb. The basic management principle of ocular trauma is that you have to save life before limb. The best initial visual acuity, corrected visual acuity, is the guide to the severity. Pupil must be checked on arrival. Avoid further damage by using a gentle handling or a peribulbar anesthesia, infiltration anesthesia. A gentle ultrasound is of immense help. CT orbit along with brain imaging can give a useful guide to the injury. Early treatment is mandatory, especially we have to start steroids, and early surgery helps to get a better visual outcome. Not all traumas in military hospitals are combat related. Here is a lady who had come with a fire jet injury in Holi. Ultrasound is of immense value. We can say this. Loss of convexity can be a useful pointer towards the open or closed globe injury. Checking RAPD, especially for my younger colleague, it's very important how to check for it, and especially on arrival with an injury. If the media is clear, fundoscopy should be done, and the cause of vision loss can be ascertained. All cases of trauma, optic nerve lesions have to be kept in mind, especially when there is an RPD present and you can see a small trauma over the brow, and the patient have to be immediately started with IV methylprednisolone. Various scenarios are present where we have to decide whether it is open or a closed globe injury. Here is a case of a missing wound where a soldier who was hit by a cricket ball and presents with complete hyphema with a very high pressure. And we thought that is a case of a closed globe injury. However, the patient after 7th, 8th day started having a sudden fall in IOP, and when explored, revealed to be a open globe injury. These are the various picture one must keep in mind, especially if you are thinking in terms of a closed globe injury. You can see a breach in the sclera, especially under the conjunctiva or a subconjunctival hemorrhage. So when do you explore these kind of occult injuries? When there is a subconjunctival hemorrhage which is extending to the fornix, a boggy subconjunctival hemorrhage, eye which is soft, inaccurate projection of rays or PL negative. But I must say that even in case if there is a PL negative person who comes immediately after trauma, one must give a trial of treatment, because in these cases also sometimes you can get a useful vision. Ultrasound or CT scan, especially when there is a deformed globe. Scenario 2, regarding the prognostication of the vision. So there are various scenarios. In this case, if you see there is a subilam bleed, the classical clinical picture of subilam bleed is a white ring sign. You can see the white ring here, and you know that it's a case of a subilam bleed. In this case, usually this presented with a gross diminution of vision on presentation. However, when OCT was done in these cases, one saw a good ellipsoid zone, and later on the patient gained good visual recovery, and these are the very good prognostic signs. However, in other scenario, when the patient presented with a subretinal bleed, the prognosis is not very good. It must be all these subretinal bleeds must be removed within 7 to 10 days. As primary ophthalmologist, one can, at least in this scenario, one can just give air or a gas in the intravitreal cavity and do a little paracentesis and send to a tertiary care center or to a vitreoretinal center surgeon. Subretinal TPA is required in these cases along with air tamponade or a gas tamponade. There is no role of anti-VEGF in this case, and the patient has to be in prone position. All these cases should not, if you have given a gas or air, one should not transport them by air. This is a case where the patient present, if you see, you tend to miss these cases. The patient complained of a good vision. Vision was 6/6, but there was a central scotoma. So when OCT was done, the ellipsoid zone, there was a loss of ellipsoid zone in the perifoveal region. If you see this in this perifoveal region, the ellipsoid zone was lost. So these cases, they can have a dense central scotomas. And if this ellipsoid zone is lost in the subfoveal region, the vision is very poor. If you see this presentation, if you see the fundus picture, you will see it's a grossly normal fundus, and sometimes these patients are labeled as malignerers. So before labeling anybody as maligner, one must do an OCT. If you see this OCT, there is a loss of the ellipsoid zone in the subfoveal region, and these cases are not likely to gain a useful vision. In other cases of post-traumatic purchase retinopathy, one must differentiate it. You get this kind of picture in a polytrauma, and you must differentiate it from any arterial occlusion. The prognosis is poor in these cases, and one can give an initial trial of systemic steroids. Post-trauma can also present with various forms of occlusions, the retinal occlusions. So it could be a CRAO, BRAO, or even the venous occlusions. This case has a unique case of a hemicentral retinal artery occlusion. The field loss was predominant with a vision of 6/9. And all these cases, embolic cause must be worked up, especially the carotids, to rule out any focus of embolus. One can have a traumatic chorioretinopathy. Initially, though, maybe you may not be able to find out a chorioretinopathy, but if there is a subretinal hemorrhage along with that, or when the patient comes little later, you can have a scarring, and if the fovea is involved, the vision is definitely affected. You can have a secondary CNVM at a later date on these sites. Role of steroid, though, may be given initially, but it's doubtful. Now, next, what is the timing of surgery? It's very, very important to know when to intervene, early or late. So here's a case, a young soldier who had come from a nearby place from Meerut with a sudden drop in vision following trauma. And he complained of a curtain-like shadow in the left eye. He was seen and diagnosed to have a supratemporal dialysis with a macula of RD. And a buckling was done in this case, and the patient regained a 6/6 vision. So it's very important to reiterate that buckling can be very, very rewarding, especially in younger people and when there is a dialysis. Another scenario, a badminton injury with a racket. A young person comes with a vitreous hemorrhage and on ultrasound detected to have RD and subretinal bleed. Surgery done in the same day and a good visual recovery of 6/18. Here's a case of, we all see traumatic macular hole. So there's always a controversy. Then can you wait in a traumatic macular hole? Some say that you can wait up to 3 months. However, if the macular hole is large macular hole, or there is a subretinal bleed, one must immediately intervene. However, in case if the macular hole is small and the patient can be followed up with serial OCTs, one can wait and watch. And these holes, like this hole, which was 264 micron, closed just by observation. One can get a hemorrhagic cyst with RD. So this was a paper which was published as a case report by my colleague. But in these cases, one must do for cytology for medical legal purpose. So surgical ventures, more or less, as it was told by my colleague, that it's a specialty approach. It could enter-segment surgeon is very, very important, because if the media is not clear, then you cannot see the retina and you cannot do any surgery. So in case keratoprosthesis or suture of the corneal lacerations is required before you venture out for the vitreoretinal surgery. This is a case of a globe rupture. If you see this, there was a globe rupture in the supratemporal quadrant with a retinal incarceration. So after doing a band buckle, a vitrectomy was, you see the retina, you see the cataract, the vision was, the media was very, very hazy because of the cataract, and because of the dense vitreous hemorrhage, the cataract surgery was also had to be carefully done. You can see a dense vitreous hemorrhage just behind the IOL, and carefully you have to clear the media and remove all the vitreous hemorrhage. One has to be very, very careful in doing vitrectomy in these cases, because the vitreous is completely mixed with the blood and it is firmly adherent to the retina, and one must avoid making any iatrogenic break, because if you make large breaks, then it will be very the retina.
We have time. Please stop the time. We have time.
I'll just continue, please. Thank you. In this case, there's another case where the initial buckling did not settle the retina, and patient also had a subluxated cataract lens. So it was cataract surgery was done with iris hook and CTR ring was implanted. IOL was implanted, and you can see the various PVR changes in the retina, and they have to be carefully removed, and a gas was implanted, and the patient had a good set retina, which was very well settled. Another case of a GRT in young, this patient had this boy had come from nearby place with a history of trauma, and there was a GRT. So in these cases, invariably one has to do a lensectomy, because you have to go closer to the base and shave the entire vitreous. One has to be very, very careful, because you tend to have a very high failure rate in these cases. So after doing a meticulous vitrectomy, and we do a silicone oil PFCL direct exchange, and after 360-degree laser. So the take-home message is that suspect posterior segment trauma when the fundus is not visualized. Systemic management is very, very crucial, as we say that saving the life and limb before going further. Invariably, these patients require general anesthesia. Systemic steroids are mandatory in these cases. A careful ocular ultrasound and NCCT is must if there is no fundus view. One has to manage the intersegment well, and it's a multidisciplinary approach. Timing of this surgery has to be very, very important, and one should be ready to face challenges on table. So, I sum it up now that in armed forces, we have hospitals spread across all over the country, and we have to work in a very, very difficult terrain and a difficult environment. So it's very important for the first responders to do the basic treatment and follow the principle of saving life before limb. Multi-organ trauma is commonly seen in these cases, and hence multidisciplinary approach. In armed forces, the telemedicine has totally revolutionized the treatment, and a prompt casual evacuation from these difficult terrains has helped in a good recovery, and we have been able to salvage various advanced case of trauma with a good visual recovery. I must also put on record that my colleague Anirudh has been presenting his paper from the China border. So this is what is armed forces is about, that, you know, sitting from all over country and still able to connect with each other. And we have a very strong bonding in our specialty, and we are able to tackle any situation with best of the facilities available at all centers. Thank you.